If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Hello, everyone. This is Carrot. Welcome to another episode of the Dihedral Podcast. Today, we're going to be holding a roundtable discussion on the topic of physics and rock climbing. The panel is an esteemed group of people who have made unique contributions to the world of physics and climbing. We're all spread out all over the U.S., so I thought it might be easier if we could each take a minute to introduce ourselves before we get started. So, everybody, welcome to the show. If you don't mind introducing yourselves, we'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Dave Custer here, and I think I'm here because when I was a first-year physics student and I was riding my bicycle, I realized everything I knew about physics except planetary motion, I knew because I rode a bicycle. And as a result, ever since, I've sort of been at the boundary of engineering and education and a little bit of, I don't know, it's not physics education, but first-year physics education, if you will. And I climb. And part of climbing is thinking about climbing stuff. And so I think about the physics all the time. And that got me into being the American Alpine Club's representative to the IAAA Safety Commission, which I've been a member of now for, 15 or 20 years.
That's great.
Hi, I'm Holly. I'm starting my PhD at Caltech. I'm studying mathematical physics. Math and physics have always been a part of my life since I was little. Just love figuring out the way things work, and I feel like that's the draw to climbing, figuring out how different climbs work, how to manage different types of holds and geometries, and that's the challenge I love about it. And naturally, of course, I'm a sport climber because you need the height, all of the fun things that come with that, and ropes and things, and just love that. So that's my deal.
Okay, so I'm Graham Kribs. I'm a professor of physics at the University of Oregon. My day job is to do particle physics. So that's Higgs bosons, forces in atoms, cosmology, dark matter, large scale structure, many of these sort of topics. That's what I'm paid to do. Although we at the University of Oregon, we also have this wonderful program called the Outdoor Pursuits. And it was actually there where I took one of these sort of intro to climbing courses almost like 15 years ago. I had done a little bit of climbing before that, but then I took this thing from what is now one of the directors of the program, Dan Crow, and he taught me a whole number of little things about how to think about climbing and how to pursue and so forth. And I had this sort of idea from that moment on that at some point I had to fuse physics and climbing into a course. And in the last couple of years, last 3 or 4 years, I've been able to teach a course on the science of climbing, which it sort of essentially involves looking at the gear ratings, the strength of gear, both in the context of if you try to break it and what the breaking strengths are, also aspects of ropes and rope strength, fall factor, and essentially taking all of the basic sort of Newtonian physics and illustrating how that works in the concept of this course. And so, as I said, it's been offered a few years now. It's been sort of a small course, not too many students, but it's been great fun, and it's wonderful to sort of talk about that and other aspects of climbing. Obviously, I'm a climber. I would rate myself as really sort of an intermediate climber, but I like it a lot and I enjoy it. So that's I think the most important thing.
That's great. Noah.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name's Noah Steinberg. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Fermilab. So if you don't know Fermilab, it's America's foremost particle physics laboratory right outside of Chicago. And a postdoc is this position that's sort of in between being a graduate student and a full professor like most people in physics want to be. So I study neutrinos at Fermilab. It's kind of Fermilab's mission statement. And neutrinos are these really ghostly, interesting particles because they interact very weakly with matter. So they're really hard to study. So we have to work very hard to see them and study their properties. And so I'm both a theorist and partially an experimentalist there. So I get to do basically everything that's fun about physics. And when I'm not doing physics, I'm rock climbing. So my girlfriend has a house in the Red River Gorge. So if I'm not at Fermilab, I'm usually there trying to climb as much as possible. And it's really interesting trying to balance this life of being a physicist and trying to rock climb as hard as I possibly can. So it's a really fun life.
Yeah, no, I actually want to come back to that in a couple of minutes. But before doing that, I want to ask, or at least talk to Dave and Graham. You two are two of the only, if not the only two people I could find that teach or have taught or been part of classes on the physics of climbing. And so I'm wondering if you guys could just break down in a little bit more detail. I know, Graham, you started, what a student could expect if they end up in a physics of climbing class.
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in. The part of it is I used to do, or I do, and I still have done a number of sort of brief outreach sort of programs in different places. I did this at the Aspen Center for Physics. I've done it with sort of local UO programs in the summer. They bring in sort of summer students where usually it's just a couple of hours, and I give them a little bit of insight into sort of how climbing equipment is manufactured, why it's done the way it is, why ropes are designed the way they are, why they stretch, why it's important to have that they stretch, and so forth, and many of these sort of topics. What I wanted to do with the course was to try to put more background into that, to actually sort of walk through what are the aspects of what physics actually leads you to conclude about what the strength of a cam needs to be, what is its braking force necessary to have, and what in concert with that, what is the stretch of a rope that you need to have so that this entire system works properly. Another aspect of it that I did was helmet design. So both climbing helmet versus bike helmet versus other helmets. And we did this by sort of putting little fake watermelons inside the helmets. So this was very sort of, not highly scientific with little sensors all over the place, but literally just, watermelons in helmets. We would drop them from various heights, and we would watch what happens when they're in a bike helmet, in a climbing helmet, or not in a helmet at all. And the drama of that often has a lot of direct impact on students and their helmet usage after that. So
oh my God,
that gives you some idea of some of the topics that I do.
Yeah, Dave, what separates your class from that, or was it a similar approach?
And there's ways I think they're very, very similar, and there's some questions that physics just answers. It tells you, well, how strong does the cam have to be? And so there's part of the class has always involved like going over sort of what's known, and like how do cams work, and I don't know why do people talk about fall factor, things like that. And then there's another part where I want them to do something, and like what they do, like they can model things, they can experiment with things. And some of the things, there was somebody who did a really nice model of the catenary, the shape of the rope when it dangles, which has to do with, well, how far are you going to fall depending on how far your belayer is from the wall and how much slack they have out. And so there's things like that. And we were curious whether gates could open when the rope flaps. And so what's the frequency of the rope during a fall arrest? And then what's the natural frequency of the carabiner gate? And when are they liable to match up? And so they did an experimental thing there. And so, yeah, it's possible. There's some neat frequencies where it'd be nice to have a locking carabiner on that carabiner.
Man, that sounds like the overlap of like fun, learning, physics, everything, safety. I mean, all those things sound spectacular. Did you guys find the class rewarding as professors, or were you just more there to teach the students new stuff?
Yeah, I obviously I found it really, really rewarding. I was fortunate that there is a wonderful set of individuals, the Williams, that they created a fund where you could apply for funding to buy equipment. From there, I was fortunate to get a small grant to be able to buy primarily force meters. So these are things to measure the force on equipment. That allowed us to do explicit tests of lead falls in different scenarios, as well as, say, top rope falls, and seeing the forces on both the belayer or on the anchor. And that was it was a great thing to be able to have that information as well. What I think was what was sort of wonderful about this program was that it brought people who did have some experience climbing, and in a number of cases, it was sometimes there were people who were coming from the sciences. Some were coming from just humanities, and they would come and they would sort of see a little bit about how the science and the physics comes together. They wouldn't necessarily understand equations that I would write on the board, okay, but I didn't really force them to understand that. Yeah. But they would definitely be able to see it sort of in demonstration. It was essentially like a sort of quarter-long lab course where they come and they do these little sort of experiments each time, trying to understand how all of these pieces come together.
That's such a dream class. Dave, did you want to add anything to that?
No.
All right. So let me throw a couple of questions at Holly and Noah. So both of you have found ways to balance, and Noah, you're actually going through this at this very moment, ways to balance the demands of studying and working in the world of physics, and also a passion of climbing. And so I was wondering if you could talk about some of the overlaps between these two time-consuming and demanding activities. Holly, what do you do to balance out your life of climbing and studying physics?
Yeah, it's tough, especially, I'm sure it is for professors as well, but being a student, there's always a lot of other things going on, and everything's always transitional. So it's everything is always kind of filled up in the air. And so balancing that with climbing, I feel sometimes they kind of go together where, maybe I'm having a really hard time with certain work that I'm doing. And then I'm like, you know what? It's time for me to take a break. It's time for me to kind of disconnect from these current problems I'm having with my work and go and do something that really takes over my whole brain, which I feel like climbing takes over quite a bit, especially if you're outside and you're scared or trying to deal with gear and things. On the flip side of that, when I'm outside and I'm scared, the unfortunate thing is sometimes I know why things could fail. I know how they could fail. I'll be like, well, I can't fully trust everything because I know too much about it. And so sometimes that can be discouraging, when I get, afraid lead climbing or something. But again, it's a two-way street, because then after that, I'll be like, well, I know what kind of problem this is, and maybe it's not a big deal. And so I guess everything kind of balances itself out in a way, where, benefits, drawbacks, but I think at the end of the day, because, math and physics and climbing are both two very similar activities, they kind of balance each other out in that they're both so engaging and you have to be fully present. And I think that's why a lot of people overlap between the two activities, and it's how they work together.
Yeah. No, what do you do to balance your time between climbing and physics?
Yeah, it's definitely not the easiest thing ever. I think one of the biggest things that I've learned is being really good with organizing my time. So, there are times of the day, like in the morning and the beginning of the afternoon, where I'm 100% focused on work, and I try not to let climbing distract me at all or think about it. But then the nice thing is, like Holly was saying, that you can, sort of cut yourself off when you need a break and go do this thing that, totally takes over your brain and your body, and you can kind of leave your other problems behind. I think climbing and physics have this interesting overlap for me because I'm a bit of an obsessive personality. So there will be times where I'm laying in bed at night and I can't go to sleep, and Sometimes it's because I'm thinking of some physics problem that I'm working on, and everyone sort of dreams of having these inspirational moments in the middle of the night, which actually do happen. But similarly, I'll have nights where I just cannot stop thinking about one particular move that's shutting me down. And so similarly, I can't sleep and I'm trying to have breakthrough moments of beta in the middle of the night. So yeah, the overlap's interesting. Trying to balance my time is something that I'm always working on. I basically am just doing things all the time. I'm either, I live or I work remotely for the most part. And so I go to Fermilab where I work about 1 week out of the month. And then the other time I'm either in Michigan with my girlfriend's family or down in Kentucky climbing. So I'm basically always on the go. And so having this, very, motivated and time consuming, physics career, I think kind of works well with my always on the move lifestyle.
Yeah. I mean, some people will say that, but you're literally living it right now. So Noah's driving back from Kentucky to Michigan as we speak. So he's actually living what he just said. So I want to open up the conversation to everybody. I don't know if anybody has any particular questions for anybody at the table, but if you do, please just chime in. If not, I'm happy to keep picking your guys' brains.
So I'll jump in right. First of all, I'll just say, Noah, come out to Oregon. We have awesome climbing here. Okay. But I'm curious about how people think about climbing from the perspective of its sort of its function. How to say this? Its function in your brain as you're climbing, shall we say, versus the sort of activities you might do, or at least as I might do, sort of pen and paper, or as you might do if you were an experimentalist and you're working with equipment. In the sense that for me, I often see it as it's a series of puzzles. It's a series of puzzles to work out moves, to work out how sequences go, and so forth. And it's that sort of challenge of the puzzle, actually, to me, is one of the things that I find sort of most attractive to it. I mean, not the least of which is being outside, just being outside in awesome environments, and being able to sort of to scale vertical rock to the extent that it's scalable for me. But that to me, I find is one of the most interesting things about climbing, is this concept of solving a puzzle, because that I have a great close appreciation with when it comes to physics. So I'm curious about others if they have a similar sort of experience.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely more of a theorist, so I can't really comment too much on the experimental side of things. But countless days I'll sit there at the chalkboard and be like, all right, what's going on here? Just kind of totally engulfed in that problem what I'm working on, or some series of ideas. And I feel like that's very similar to climbing, but at the same time, the one thing that I think has physics beat in a way is that like when I'm stuck on something I don't understand, something I can't fix, I'm just kind of like, this is frustrating. I guess I can keep trying new things, but at a certain point you're just like, I need to step away, I don't understand. But I feel like when there's something difficult on the wall, you can physically try harder, which you can't really do with your brain. Like, you can't be like, brain, be smarter. But when you're on the wall, you'd be like, you know what, I'm gonna hold this really hard. Like, I'm gonna crimp this so hard, it's gonna be great. Or like, you can just keep doing things physically that you can push yourself in a way that might help you on the climb. So I feel like they're similar, but it's definitely the ability to push yourself in a different way is a nice contrast.
I guess I'll jump in if nobody minds. So I think that's a really interesting question. One of the things that I really like you said before, was the sort of analytical problem solving aspect of climbing. And I think that the great thing about the two of them is that climbing and physics are also very collaborative. So in physics, you're often working with several other people and you're bouncing ideas off each other, and you have different methods of solving a problem. And then the same thing shows up in climbing. People have different beta, different ways of doing moves. And I think in both physics and climbing, I've learned the most when I'm open to, getting other people's perspectives, and, climbing with people that are stronger than me, and doing physics with people that are smarter than me is often the best way that I've learned anything.
Yeah, that's great, Noah.
And I'll say it's curious. I got into climbing because I didn't want to talk to anybody. And but it works out. And I'll add to the puzzle piece. I like being able to solve the puzzles like kinesthetically. Like it is like another methodology of solving things that doesn't have to do with, I don't know, paper or pencil, or an experimentation. Fine, you get to use your hands. But I don't get to, I don't know, tunnel through things and turn upside down and kick a foot up above my head when I'm building apparatus.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that you said that. I usually think of climbing as like this real community event. I mean, there are times you can kind of climb on your own and not have to talk to anybody, but that's not your like mode of operation, huh, Dave?
It boggles my mind that like people go soloing together. Like I simply don't understand that phenomenon at all.
Yeah. So what can you guys say about the, I don't know, the overlap between a climbing community and a physics community?
I think it's exactly what Noah said, where you get a lot of, I feel like both are definitely, there's a lot of mentorship that comes along. Like, again, personally as a student, I've had like really, really incredible mentors that they're just like, you know what, like we're gonna help you and you're gonna know physics and it's gonna be great. And they just want to help you learn, and they just like bring you into their world and like, what are they researching and things. And I feel like that's just it's so second nature to them. Like they're not like, oh, I have to deal with this person, like whatever, it's just so natural. Like, of course, someone help me and I'm going to help you, and that's how that's going to be. And I feel like in climbing it's the same thing. Like, oh, like, yeah, someone taught me how to belay, I'm going to teach you how to belay, it's going to be great. And it's I feel like that sort of like pass it on or whatever, pass it forward kind of deal is kind of how the community is. And just everyone is like wanting everyone else to be a part of their community, and they're willing to teach and be taught, which is huge.
Yeah. Anybody else want to say anything about community?
I'll jump in and just say, I appreciate all of these comments. I think it's this is definitely one of the great things that I said many years ago to a student who was wondering whether they wanted to sort of go on in physics in the academic route, and they sort of were asking me, how should I think about this? Should I go or should I, I said, well, often you get into physics for the physics, but you'll stay because of the people.
Oh, wow. And
in a way, I wonder, to some extent with climbing, sometimes you get into climbing for climbing, but you may stay again because of the people that you're involved in, the community. I think that the idea that there just are these communities that have this sort of shared knowledge, and everyone is able to sort of quickly tell each other what's going on and how to communicate because of this shared knowledge, it does provide a wonderful community. Each one has their own wonderful communities, which is all the better when you're part of both. So
it was really funny when I reached out to Noah. He wrote back to me. I'm like, I'm putting a roundtable together for some physicists that climb, and he's like, I didn't know there were that many physicists that climb. So there's a lot of people out there that actually do both. I was really impressed to find out. And obviously, I'm grateful to have you guys on here. And so I kind of want to separate the two for a second, if you guys don't mind. Maybe you guys could let me know maybe the best place that you've ever climbed. I mean, just ignoring physics altogether, if there's like a rock that you were able to get your hands on that you're like, I don't necessarily want everybody to know about this place, but this place is where you have to go. Yeah, Dave, why don't we start with you?
And I mean, you asked for one, and I don't know, like, what's your favorite song? That's really hard to
That's a
answer,
great way
and
to
it
put
probably
it.
depends on, I don't know, which morning and many other things. But I'll put it out there: the Shawangunk in New York State and Tuolumne Meadows up in the high country in Yosemite. I think those would be far and away the places that I'd be happy to go back to again and again and again.
Yeah, that's good. You know, that one was definitely not giving away any secrets at all, but those places they're populated because they're beautiful for sure. Good call. Holly, what do you think?
I have a feeling that me and Noah might be on the same page here. The red, I mean, oh man, it's so incredible, and for a lot of different reasons too. Obviously the rock is fantastic. There's just fantastic sandstone, lots of pockets and cramps, jug slopers. Like you got the whole range of holds, and the walls are so interesting, and there's just so much to do. There's like a bajillion different crags. But I think the red is unique in a lot of different ways because of the community also at the red. I'm again, no, probably can speak more to it than I can, but you got all these different like Miguel's and Larry the Arches, where people will camp and stay there for months, and climb. And everyone, you go up there for whatever weekend, and everyone is your friend now, and you can see each other at the crags. And you're like, oh, hey, I saw you yesterday, and everyone's trying to help each other and hang out with each other, which just makes the climbing more rich. And it just feels, even though maybe you could get the same rock somewhere else, but probably not. But you have that having an extra community just makes it feel that much better. Where you don't feel alone at the crag. You don't feel like you're just there and everyone else is there. You feel like we're all there together. And so you can't beat the red so far in my journey in climbing.
Good call. Graham, you got any hot takes on this?
Yeah, I have to put my Oregon bias back into it. I have to say, when there are there's actually a whole number of grad students, and then a few postdocs and some faculty at Oregon that climb. There are a number of local areas that are really quite good, including one of the grad students is even an extensive route builder, bolting and so forth, and doing that activities, which is really fantastic. Having said that, though, I can't resist dragging everyone over to Smith, which is sort of a two and a half hour drive. It's partly just because I so enjoy the combination of having sort of spectacular routes with spectacular views in sort of this sort of desert arid environment. I think if I could retire to Moab, I would, but we'll see. Okay.
That's great. Noah, you're more than welcome to pick the red, but what climbing destinations would you recommend?
Yeah, Holly, I think definitely stole my thunder.
Sorry about that.
So I mean, I think the red is the most fantastic place on earth. I would stack it up against any climbing area in the entire world and defend myself very well. But I guess then I'll pick a second place that I really love, and that's Indian Creek in Utah.
Yeah.
So Indian Creek, if people aren't familiar, it's probably some of the best trad climbing in the entire world. Just absolutely splitter cracks everywhere you turn. There's just another buttress waiting for you with 50, 100 perfect climbs. It's also this really weird place because everybody just drives out into the desert from all over the country and all over the world, and you're just camping with no cell phone service. You bring in your own food and water, and you're just kind of surviving. And especially we take a trip out there every Thanksgiving. We have like a tradition with some friends to do Friendsgiving in the creek, and it's 30 degrees at night, so everybody's freezing. But as soon as you wake up in the morning and the sun hits the rocks, everybody's just psyched to go climb. So I think Indian Creek is a close second to the red.
So yeah, Noah, I know you're driving and you can't see us right now, but we're all kind of shaking our heads. And so I know you said Friendsgiving happens. I hope you consider the four of us your friends now, and maybe we'll get an invite next Thanksgiving.
It's really funny. My undergrad has Creeksgiving every year as well. Like our outdoor club does. Indian Creeksgiving. So
That's the place to be.
we'll have to get out there.
Yeah, combined forces.
Yeah.
No, I'm surprised. I'm from Michigan as well, so there's a crag there. I thought you were going to say Grand Ledge. I thought that was going to be your spot.
I actually did think about mentioning it a little bit as a joke. But I think Grand Ledge is a place that we all grow up in Michigan. It's it's actually the first place I ever went outdoor climbing. I was just a regular gym bro, and my girlfriend, who I was just starting to see at the time, took me there. And I remember seeing the cliff line. I mean, it's just a 20-foot tall cliffs right next to this river, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Sorry about that. And I remember being like, wow, these are so tall.
That's
and I
awesome.
was super intimidated. We top roped everything that day. So I think Grand Ledge always has a special place in people's hearts.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, there's not a lot of climbing in Michigan, so you take what you can get, I guess. So yeah, those are awesome places, you guys. If anybody wants to like partner up at any of those spots, let me know. I'll fly out and meet you guys. But I want to kind of like move from just climbing to physics. And I'm wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about what you think, and feel free to be as biased as you want on this, is the coolest or most important thing happening in the world of physics, or at least your world of physics. And Dave, maybe we can throw it back to you. You've been kicking us off so far.
Oh my heavens. And so I'm not a physicist, so I'm not exactly sure what happens in the world of physics. In the world of physics and climbing, I started like very much in the physics and material properties ends of things. And I think the thing that is, and it's a huge start, as Holly was saying, like there's this risk management aspect to it. And it's like, oh my heavens, well, what are the 100 ways carabiners can fail? And like, I know all of them, and I'm looking at that carabiner that's 3 feet below my feet, and I'm like, wow, okay. But there's, and it's true, that's hugely, like, I think as a fundamental basis, that's hugely important. And then there's all these, I don't know, physiology, psychology, sort of beyond necessarily physics, but still in the STEM world, in terms of handling risk management and how people make decisions, and how groups of people make really poor decisions sometimes, and things like that are sort of like outside of just the physics.
Yeah.
I don't know, Colonel.
Yeah, that's well put. Holly, what do you think?
So tough. That's Carrot, you're asking such difficult questions. Let's see. Well, so I guess most of my physics research is partly large scale structure, and mostly now is like relativity, gravity stuff. So let's see. The most, I don't know, I would say some of the most interesting things that are going on right now would be, at least my research would be like would be how gravitational waves may not be exactly what we think they are. Where they might actually travel slower than the speed of light. They might, which basically means that does gravity not, occur as quickly as we think it does, if that makes sense. And that idea of like maybe gravity works in a way that's just totally not what we were thinking would be pretty neat. And additionally, thinking of gravity, the graviton as a particle, and it's a particle of mass. Like, what does this even mean? What does it mean to be a particle when gravity is geometry? And I feel like having all these things merge and just in crazy ways is pretty neat to me.
Yeah, that's great. Graham, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd say the big puzzle in particle physics these days. There are many, but the one that I think attracts a great deal of attention right now is trying to understand what is and the nature of what was called dark matter. So what we've sort of observed over the past sort of 20 to 30 years is that the majority of the energy density of the universe is not the stuff we're made of. Actually, a good portion of it is a very strange stuff called dark energy. There's another, which probably is just a cosmological constant, so it's kind of weird, but it's sort of fine. And then there's a portion that's called matter, and we, meaning, atoms, are really made up of only a small fraction of that total amount of matter. Most of it is dark. And we now have many, many different probes that have sort of really pinned this down to extraordinary accuracy, that we know we have this additional matter around. So there's now a huge effort worldwide through experiments all over the place that are trying to find evidence of dark matter interactions with us. So it could be dark matter bounces off a nucleon deep underground in some detector, and we see sort of the recoil of that. It could be dark matter annihilates in the center of the galaxy, and we see photons coming from that. It could be that at the LHC we collide protons and dark matter is produced there, and we're able to sort of detect it from these methods. So there's a large enterprise going on that way, and I'd say that trying to understand that, if we could ever really nail that down, that would be fantastic. So far, all we've done is probe it in these ways. We know of its existence, but we don't know how it interacts with us yet. So
That's awesome.
That's a big thing.
That's huge. And Noah, what do you think?
Yeah, so the neutrino world is buzzing with activity and new exciting things right now. We're in this kind of intermediate building stage where we're building the next generation of neutrino oscillation experiments. So something that we've learned in the last 30 years or so is that neutrinos, there are 3 different types of them. They're called flavors. That's what physicists use to describe them. And it turns out that these 3 different flavors of neutrinos, as they travel through the universe or through matter, they can actually turn into each other. And so they basically oscillate from one type of flavor into another, just like a wave does. We've known that now for a little while, but we haven't pinned down exactly how they oscillate into each other, like what are the rates at which they do that. And the parameters that control those oscillations are these fundamental constants of the universe that might tell us something about, how the universe was created, why there's more matter versus antimatter. And so neutrinos really have all these secrets that they're hiding from us. So we're building the next generation of experiments, which are going to be these gigantic multi-billion-dollar projects here at Fermilab, but also across the ocean in Japan. So what my job is, and what's really exciting about what I do, is that I'm sort of pinning down the right theoretical models that describe how neutrinos interact with matter. And that's really important because we need to be able to detect these neutrinos and predict how often we'll detect them. And it turns out that when neutrinos interact with matter, like, us, we're mainly water, which has oxygen in it, that's a very complicated problem to figure out how that happens. So it's really exciting trying to contribute, figuring out how that works and, towards this bigger global program.
I'm excited about all those things. Like, I'm a philosopher, and I'm like, yeah, tell me more. So I don't know if you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, or it might be out of your area of expertise. Maybe not, who knows? But a lot of times on the program, we'll talk to geologists and climatologists and things like that, just to talk about how the environment, specifically the rock climbing environment, is being affected by climate change and those types of things. And, most of the people that we talk to, their attitudes on this range from pessimistic to very pessimistic, I guess. And so I'm wondering if you guys, as you think about climate change and think about energy and what that takes and what it costs, if you guys are optimistic that we'll be able as humans to overcome some of the more serious problems to human existence before we get to the point of no return. So I'm just wondering if you guys have any thoughts on that, where your optimism lies, whether it's in your field or just personally. Dave, do you have any thoughts on that?
I certainly have no expertise in, I don't know. I read stuff, but are we all doomed? I don't know.
That's such a good way to put it. What do you think about the attitude of, oh, we'll just figure it out? Like, Do you think that that's true, or do you think that that's like too risky?
And I think as climbers, we all have our own metaphor for that, because we've all climbed ourselves into being too far above our gear once or twice before in our lives. And, well, are you going to slow down and place that extra piece of gear now? Or do you just, your buddies are just saying, go for it. And, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that's true. We absolutely will.
And I bet with the five of us, we all do different things on different days. And so how's the world playing it out? I bet it's a lot like climbers play things out.
I love that. That's a great metaphor. Holly, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Again, another difficult question. Thanks. I would say, considering like in physics and things, there are so many fundamental questions that we don't have the answers to. And again, I don't study geology or climate or anything, so it can't be too specific there, but you do see, based on, science and data that things aren't going super great. And, one of the things I think of all the time is it's taken us a long time to get to where we are scientifically. And I wonder, will these questions ever get answered? Will we get the chance to answer them? And to be honest, again, I do a lot of very theoretical things that, maybe don't always benefit the greater good, or I'm not putting food on the table for people. I'm not like doing anything maybe that impacts people. And so actually the question I have for you guys would be, studying things that in physics that aren't directly like serving humanity. How do you feel about that, and how does that kind of interact with the greater community, and I guess being like humanitarian, if that makes sense? And is it enough to unlock the secrets of the universe? And are we kind of hoping that these things that we research end up benefiting people in the way that GR helped make GPS, and now we have satellites and things that do very, very useful things for us, and we got to that point because of all this research that we did. And I guess so. Yeah, my question is: do you think that's going to happen with a lot of things that we research, or is that okay if it doesn't? What do you guys think?
And I think, again, there's a climbing metaphor there. I think climbing might simply be a metaphor for doing out there basic physics research. And I'm going to presume we all go climbing and say, well, how does that help the rest of the world? But I'm presuming that we bring something back from climbing to the rest of the world. And it may not be completely tangible and food on somebody's table, but if we're not, we shouldn't be climbing maybe. And I have a lot of confidence that the research you all are doing brings something back, even if it's not edible.
Yeah, I think one very striking aspect for those of us who are not just climbers, but also mountaineers in various regions of the world is, we recognize the vast reduction of mountain glacier systems. I mean, that's happened in Oregon, in Glacier National Park, in many, many regions of the world. I mean, there are famous photos in Patagonia where, again, you see these massive glaciers that have retreated, which is just so obvious evidence of the warming, of the Earth. So you see aspects of that, and that just sort of provides the sort of the concrete manifestation of the change of climate that humans have done. As to sort of where we go from here, I don't know. I think I find it hard to be completely pessimistic about it. I also find it hard to be very optimistic about it as well, because it is a global problem. We need to cooperate with all nations to being able to realize tangible results in trying to move the climate to a place that is better for everyone. And that's just a very politically difficult thing to do. scientists can provide the very concrete data of, what are our carbon dioxide levels? What are the effects of different policies? What are the effects of different changes in, for example, how electricity is produced, or whether we should burn coal versus natural gas versus oil, and so forth. Those are very concrete things that we can provide as scientists, but the policy decisions ultimately have to be made, by those that get elected, and they really need the populace of the world sort of has to come to this realization of we all have to put skin in the game, right? We're all going to have to make sacrifices, some modest sacrifices, so as to have improvements for further generations. And I'm hopeful that we get there, but especially given, I have a 10-year-old daughter. I would like to see her. She has a great world, so there's always self-interest in some of this, but yeah, it's the political side of it is what I think is probably the more, I don't know, depressing part of the,
Yeah. Noah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think I'll try to answer both of the questions as best as I can remember them. So I don't think I'm super pessimistic about the future, as in regards to the environment and climate change. And I guess my thoughts on that is just that I think that human ingenuity kind of knows no bounds. I mean, if you look at the past where we were even 100 years ago in terms of science and technology, I mean, people back then would hardly even, recognize the world if they were transported to now. So it's really, really hard to predict what sort of advances are going to be made. And of course, the speed in which they're going to be made. For instance, I didn't even know that there were people in physics that were working on, making extremely high efficiency, basically solar panels, but using, different sorts of technology than solar panels are being made with right now. So there's all sorts of people doing cutting edge research all over the world. And I'm confident that, together we can find solutions to these problems. For the second question about, if how I feel about, my work in regards to helping other people, I think that's always something difficult when you're in kind of a, pure science, if I could call physics that, because it's hard to see the actual, effect of your work on the rest of the world. But I think that the return on investment of research is always huge. I mean, you never know what you're working on is going to change the future. I mean, when radio waves were first discovered, I think, I forgot who said it, but he said that this will have no effect on our lives. And now, radio waves basically are how the world communicates with each other and how we communicate with satellites and all of that. I mean, the magnets that are used in MRIs, I think, were developed from the magnets that were being used for particle colliders. So I'm confident, again, that positive things come out of the work that we all do.
That's uplifting. Thanks, Noah. So we're running out of time. I thought I'd just end with a question. You guys can give it your perspective, either from the climbing side or the physics side. I'm wondering what you guys think the limits of climbing are in terms of grade. I mean, we've seen people work harder, study more, tweak their bodies here and there. And I'm sure the people from the 1970s and 80s couldn't even dream of some of the routes that we're putting up today. And by I just mean the community at large, maybe not necessarily the five of us, but is it possible that one day somebody's going to send a 517 or something like that? So I'm just wondering if you guys could just think for a second at what you think the limits of grade are in terms of physical possibilities. And then if you want to throw a Y into that, that'd be great. So Dave, we're always starting with you. Do you want to go first again? I feel like it's kind of a disadvantage. We can start with Noah if you want some more time to think about it.
No, I was just thinking I'm going to give somebody who's got a pencil and a piece of paper and an envelope there to actually do the math. So I don't think it's unlimited, because I think even with $6 million man technology, the human body is just not going to be able to, I don't know, keep up with continuing grades. And it seems to me it's leveling off. Right. And like, fine, there's 8 people or something that climb 5, whatever the huge number is.
Yeah.
But it's just a probability problem plus some actual physics of how human beings are put together, and there's going to be a limit.
Yeah. And you think we're getting close to it?
Yeah, I feel like we're a lot closer to it than it was when I started climbing.
Well put. Holly, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think Dave, you're right on point there. You know, again, I'm not like anthropologist or biologist or anything, but I do think that the evolution of like humans, isn't really it's going to take way too much time, compared to uh, the grades that we're pushing. So I mean, I don't think human bodies are going to actually evolve to be any better in a reasonable amount of time. But I do think, Dave, what you said about probability, I think that's a really good point. I think that we are kind of plateauing in a sense. We're getting near that limit. But there are going to be people that are just born with, a really good wingspan or a really good tennis strength or something, where it's just like, yeah, that you're going to be able to out climb other people. And so I think that, yeah, we're going to level off, but there's also a point of just probability where people are just going to have certain advantages and climb, still really well, but again, still under some bound. No doubt about it.
Yeah. Any idea what that bound would be?
Not a clue. I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're like totally there yet, but I think we're close. Definitely no more than a couple grades, I would say.
We're getting close.
But, not in stone. Who's to say?
Yeah,
maybe also technology too, like, I don't know, super light ropes, or like really, I don't even know, like new, I don't know, like even not like drugs, but like, those like Gatorade types of things where it's just like, yeah, extra electrolytes are helpful for you. So I don't know if there are other things like that can help with pump, or anything where it's just exhaustion thing, where maybe we come out with new technology where people just don't get tired as much, and so stuff that was really hard is a little bit more accessible, and so maybe that will change things too.
Yeah, great. Graham, what do you think?
I'm definitely with Dave and Holly on this. At least with regard to the sort of the climbing that we've been describing, the one area where I could imagine something could qualitatively change. Not that I'm a huge proponent of human exploration of other planets, but if we ever actually made it to Mars, there's some awfully good-looking rock there, and the acceleration of gravity there is about 0.4, I think, of Earth, which means even I could start climbing 514 on Mars. Okay, awesome. So I'm just saying, there's always the possibility of opening up, different things if you sort of change the physical parameters of how you're.
That's so cool. Yeah. No, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'll actually, I guess, push back a little bit against what everybody's saying. I think that the limits in climbing are kind of only now just being explored. I mean, if you look at bouldering, for example, the first V17 was put up in 2016, and there was one person that did it. And I think as of now, there's almost 7 or 8 people that have climbed that hard on similar boulders that are all pretty confirmed that grade. And I think one of the big thing that's happening is that comp climbing has gotten really, really big, and kids starting very, very young. I mean, I saw a 12-year-old girl the other week. She flashed the hardest route in pretty much the whole region that I'm in, like a 14A, and then walked over and sent a 14C. And I mean, this is like the start of her outdoor career. So I think, kids coming from the comp scene who have been climbing and have just, got steel is something that's coming for all of us. But then the other thing is that climbing is getting bigger. And I think one of the things that it's missing is that there's this, massive population that climbing has not gotten to. And so all these people who, like Holly was saying, have these genetics, maybe they have just stronger tendons or bigger wingspans or, more red blood cells so they don't get pumped as fast. As climbing grows, I think people, and as climbing also becomes something that people can seek out as a career and they can support themselves, those sort of populations, that the people who could be really good will actually, get to try climbing. So I'm really excited to see what the limits are in the next 10 or 20 years.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch for sure. So our hour's almost up. Before I thank you guys for joining us, first that went by really fast. So that was awesome. Thank you guys a lot. But before I get to that, I want to see if there's anything you guys want to promote or shout out. Graham, you might have a class, be like, hey, sign up for this, or Dave. So if there's anything, I guess, Dave, we might as well start with you one last time. If there's anything you want to throw out there, now's your time.
Well, I think climbing is design, and there's a lot that goes into the choices that climbers make. And somewhere underneath all that, there is physics and material science and psychology and physiology. And that's worth contemplating in your spare time as you drive to and from the crag.
Awesome. Holly, what do you think?
Well, first, shout out to the dihedral. Thanks for having us. You guys are super cool. Love the blog. But yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of humanitarian things, go animal shelters. Dogs are really great for crags. So
True.
ever get a chance to foster, adopt, or just volunteer, that it makes a big difference in their lives. So recommend.
Yeah, Graham.
Yeah, I think I would put a big sort of shout out just generally to STEM degrees, science, technology, engineering, and math, as a great gateway into so many different things to learn, careers, professions, and so forth. But that it also has this strong connection to exactly how climbing equipment is manufactured, and that it has to be done in a particular way. So I think if we can sort of take people who are already practicing techniques and practicing good climbing style that is safe and is keeping people going and preventing injury, then that's maybe we can start to redirect some of these individuals sort of into the STEM area and sort of just expand the base of all the people who we could possibly have involved in science generally.
Yeah, that's great. Noah, any final thoughts?
Yeah, so just want to shout out to supporting science, whatever way in which you can do that, whether it's through your vote or donations or support. Science is one thing that's pushing us forward. Also, shout out to the whole Michigan climbing community. You guys are great, and I wouldn't be here without you. And that if anyone wants to get inspired by some Red River Gorge climbing, my girlfriend and I have a YouTube channel called Beta Addicts, and it's got great videos of lots of climbs in the red. And so if you're looking to get psyched on climbing, it's a great place to start.
That's awesome, Noah. Thank you guys so much for this. I don't know if you'd be willing to, but I would love to maybe revisit each other in a year from now and just check in again and have another conversation. So I'm not sure if you had as much fun as I did, but if you did, we'll stay in contact. We'll try to make it happen.